Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to You Have Me Beat. I'm K Rain, and today we have Beat Before the Weekend. So I know it sounds a little crazy, but in the title, I'm pretty much referring to the stylings of the weekend before the weekend became the weekend, right? Trilogy era The Weekend. I want to say that's my favorite era. Everything past that, it's not really for me. Um, but yeah, those early mixtapes, I feel like that's the real deal right there. Um, and it essentially created a whole new style of R&B, if you want to call it. The contemporary R&B, which kind of evolved into alternative R&B. But what The Weeknd was doing back then, 2010, 2011, very different from what we were hearing at the time. Um, yeah, and just like his elusive character, just like not showing his face at all, kind of like really bled into like the music and the atmosphere and everything, etc. Yeah, but this beat, I've been doing a lot of like the weekend style beats for quite a while, but this is the first beat, one of the first beats where it's drumless and it's very left field. And I didn't use any samples. It's everything's from scratch essentially. Um, but I originally made this in 2022, but I didn't actually release it on the internet until 2024. And I think at the time that I made it, I was pretty much thinking for myself ahead of time because there's a lot of space in the instrumental, and just the fact that it's drumless, I was just like, I want to make something that I would want to rework or revisit in the future. So I think that's pretty cool. And then sonically, it's really strange because at the time, of working on it, I was just thinking about like the whole weirdcore aesthetic. If you don't know about weirdcore, you can search that up. Just like liminal spaces in general, just kind of like really weird stuff. And then I remember watching the Barbie movie, and I was just thinking about weird Barbie. It's like that was my favorite Barbie character, I think. And I was just like, it'd be kind of cool to make like a instrumental inspired by weird Barbie's environment. And then another thing I was thinking about was just like lost or no found footage of the 90s, weird things that maybe you don't really remember, lost footage, stuff like that. So like all of that kind of like feeds into the aesthetic of this instrumental. um I think I've been talking way too much, so let me just play the instrumental and then we can talk a little bit more later. Yeah, yeah, I think it's pretty sick. I can understand if someone doesn't like it because it's not it's not really conventional. Um, but yeah, I think it's pretty cool. All the tracks in red, like I pretty much brought this out of the woodworks. It took a while to pretty much reprogram all the instrumentals again, so that's why you're seeing all the red. It's pretty much I just unloaded everything back into its original setting. But yeah, the first time that I made this beat, it did have drums. Um, but I didn't really like the way it was sounding. I felt like the way it's sounding right now, it's a lot more easier for like someone to just like sing or rap or whatever onto the beat. Um, I will play the drums in a bit. Um, but yeah, I also remember like the first time I uploaded this track to the internet, someone commented like, "What happened to you?" Like, and I was like, I didn't say anything, but nothing happened to me. I'm just experimenting. So that's how left field this instrumental is, I guess, to the normies. But yeah, pretty cool track. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't say this sounds exactly like the weekend stuff. But if you listen to Thursday, a lot of tracks on Thursday, they feel very like ideas, ideas to the core. And I feel like this is something that could sound like an idea that the weekend would have maybe wanted to experiment with. So that's kind of what I was going for. So it's not really a core beat, but it's a really cool idea. And that's why I'm revisiting it now because there's so many ways you can look at it, right? And if you listen to Trilogy, which is like all of the weekend's mixtapes combined into one, there are a lot of different styles. Um, and this is one that I feel like stands out but doesn't at the same time. Um, but yeah, I did also re-record, I guess like a little post-punk version of the track too. I like recorded some bass, electric guitars, and kept the same kind of like ice piano ambient tone in the mix too. So I feel like that's something we could try working with right over here with the drums too. Um, I'm just trying to see if I missed anything before I want to move forward. No, I think we're good. Um, okay, so here is like a little, I guess like a post punk reference that I just kind of threw into the mix. Just ignore the static. I'm sorry about all of that. But yeah, see how different that sounds? Um, See, now I would feel like if you were to hear that, with everything else going on in the mix, that's probably more conventional sounding, air quotes. Um, but yeah, this is kind of really what I want to work on in this video. Because I feel like if you're not new to the Weeknd stuff, the trilogy stuff, a lot of what came from that sound is just 80s new wave and post punk. Um, it's a big foundation for the Weeknd's early stuff, especially The Cure, Susie and the Banshees, stuff like that. And I feel like that's kind of like my favorite angle as far as production goes, just kind of like flipping those kind of post punk samples and just creating something completely different. So that's something I used to do a lot back in the day, but I feel like it got kind of like, I got kind of bored of it. But the atmosphere that you're able to create while doing that, it's kind of crazy. Um, but just kind of like picking up where I left off with some of the other videos, you know, these kind of videos is just more so for like just tidbits, but also, maybe these are things that you didn't really think about that you could try too. Um, but yeah, if you ever have the curiosity to just kind of try working with like any of those kind of post punk style instrumentals and you don't really know how to EQ very well, a cool little tool is called the Fruity Convolver. Right. So I'm gonna play the track again without the convolver and then with the convolver, just this little sample area. Yeah. Mind you, these are the original drums for the beat, which I kind of took out. See, now that's sounding more like the Weeknd's version of R&B. So this is what the beat was sounding like way back in the day. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I felt like it was just like a little bit boring for my liking. Okay, so now back to this new version. So you get the idea of where we're going, right, sonically. Now this little gay sample that I created, I didn't really mix anything. It's pretty loose. There's a lot of reverb and so on, and that's why it's very loose. It's very out there. Okay, so now let's put on the Fruity Convolver, and now it's gonna get a little crazy. differences are very subtle, but it's yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on in here, right? So remember when I was just talking about, if you're new to the EQ and stuff, Fruity Convolver has a built-in EQ in the mix, which is really cool. And it's pretty much taking in everything that's going on over here, and you can tweak how much of it is taking place. But it's also EQing everything at the same time, which I feel like is really neat. And yeah, Fruity Convolver, I've dabbled in it here and there, but like I've never actually included it in like a final mix before. And also, when I started out making beats, Fruity Convolver didn't exist. So I feel like if you're getting into music production now, using FL Studio, Logic, whatever, like there's so much you can do now. Like it's insane. But yeah, dry signal, that's pretty much like everything that's not including reverb, right? So less dryness, the more reverb we have, the more space, the more ambience, the more dry, the more present everything is, and less reverb, obviously. This short in is short for input separation, stereo separation. If you keep everything in the middle, it's pretty balanced out. The way I recorded the bass and the electric guitars, it was in stereo, so it doesn't really need to change. If you put it to the right, you might not hear too much of a difference because my stuff is already recorded in stereo, but typically it's just gonna like merge things more to the right while kind of like leveling out the sounds at the same time. Wet is the opposite of dry, just more reverb essentially. This wet is for stereo separation. So you hear a lot more reverb coming in on the left side, but because it's been recorded in stereo, it's still coming from both ends. Delay, I feel like most of y'all know what delay is. It's just echo. Self-conv is short for self-convolution. So typically everything that's pretty much grayed out is just like extra. This is stuff that you don't really need to touch unless you really want to. But self-convolution is more or less applying everything that's already set to default by itself. So it's like the reverb and everything else before you actually make the tweaks, right? And you can tweak how much of it you want, but it's pretty much gonna double everything for you. Which is kind of cool, but not really necessary in my opinion. But that's if you don't use any of this stuff, then you would probably want to tweak this. But because we already have some of this stuff going on, we don't really need this. So it's like if you don't really know how to do any of this stuff, then you could just tweak this knob up, self-convolution. Stretch is a resampling tool. Very similar to self-convolution, except it's pretty much relating more to the dynamics and sound, right? Right now it's set to 100, which is pretty balanced out. More to the right, there's like a bit of a drowning out that's kind of pulling, to the right hand side. And to the left, things are getting a little bit thinner. See, everything's kind of like drowned out. We want to keep it to 100. We don't want anything more, anything less. And then again, EQ, which is the final step. And then on top of everything, we also have presets, right? Look at all of that. Insane. And my screen recorder is actually cutting some of this off, but there's quite a lot going on over here. But Fruity Convolver, it's great for just creating more of an atmosphere, I would say, right? But yeah, dabbling in this style of production, which is still, I would say, is a bit of a niche. I feel like Fruity Convolver is like your best friend. Because even though when you have electric guitars, bass, etc., that is creating an atmosphere on its own, but Fruity Convolver pretty much allows you to dictate where things are going. If you're really into just movies and stuff, this is really cinematic territory right here. I'm trying to. Is it Glass Table Girls? It might be Glass Table Girls, that song. I hope I'm getting the title right. But at the end of that song, when there's a bit of a switch up, you can definitely hear the changes in the atmosphere, right? In the instrumental atmosphere. And there's a lot going on with Abel's voice too, like the reverb, and like you can kind of hear him like he's not giggling, but it's kind of giving that effect like he's kind of like coked out, but he's still trying to get his words out in the song. So yeah, Fruity Convolver, great tool for creating more of an atmosphere in this vein of music production, right? That's a vibe already. No changes need to be made here. See this versus this. One is definitely way more weirder than the other, right? But which one is better? That's up for you. That's up to you to decide, right? It's all about what you do with what you have at the end of the day, right? Cool. I think that's all I really wanted to share in this video. I hope you took something from it, you know? Again, I feel like, yeah, I don't know. A good half of the videos that I put out, it's only been like, this is probably what, the sixth video, but a good half of them are pretty alternative, I would say. Um, I would love to get, I would love to like deep dive a little bit further into more experimental territory, but it's only if it reaches the right people. Otherwise, I feel like I'm kind of wasting time. But yeah, if you feel like you learned something or you just enjoy the vibes, cool. Give me a like, subscribe. You can also follow me on my main YouTube channel, K-Rain Sound. And if you want to, sign up for some real music production lessons where I teach you everything from the get-go, send me an email, krainsound@outlook.com. You can also give me a follow on the Instagram account for this channel at YouHaveMeBeat. Okay. Yeah, that pretty much wraps up for this video. Okay. Thank you.